One of the things that we really wanted to make sure that we came back to, and I think this, it comes, it ties to audience, it ties into some of the questions that I was going through with all of you about sort of why are you doing the research that you're doing, or what is your lab focused on. The broader positioning of your research and what your lab overall is doing is really important general context for how you're going to talk about any of the specific results or specific studies that you're doing. So that's really the difference between sort of thinking about like a press release about a individual study, and then the broader statement about one, sort of what your research focus is and where your lab fits into the overall mission of where it's located and the types of researchers that you're trying to attract to come to your lab. And that is more what we would call the positioning statement. Positioning statement is going to appear at the end of your press release to help provide that background context of who did the research and where is it coming from. And it might appear, just before a positioning statement from your institution, and or like any companies or things like that if there was corporate collaborators. So I think thinking through that is important for the context of what we were talking about today with the press releases, but also in thinking about your own promotion. If getting your research out there by press release is part of promoting what you are doing individually and attracting researchers to your lab, it's worth thinking through. So in writing these, and again, I could do like a whole nother 3 to 4 hour workshop on developing the positioning statement and how you go through doing that. But when you write a description about what you're doing, when we're doing this for companies, because sometimes it seems like every single biotech company is trying to save the world, it's helpful to go through some gut checks about how effectively is that positioning statement helping you to stand out from all the other labs who might be doing similar research. So I've given you just a couple of qualities here to think through, and that's, is it unique? Is it important? And again, I think everybody goes into a field or works so hard to, become a faculty member, get your PhD, kind of push through because you really feel strongly about the importance of the research you're doing. So how effectively are you communicating that? Is it focused, or is it kind of wandering and including the laundry list of everything that you're doing? This gets back to claims and sort of my harping on credibility here. Is it instantly believable? Is it accurate? Is it action-oriented? What is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? Or is there something that you really, is there a call to action? You want people to feel fired up after they read about what you're doing. Is it timely and lasting? That might seem contradictory there, but the timely piece gets back to context, which we're talking a lot about. And then lasting is you don't want to have to edit this every single time you're making an announcement, or have to go onto your website or your Twitter profile and be editing this statement. So you want it to be bigger picture enough that it's gonna last a little bit until maybe there's a major change in the field that you need to add and reflect. And then managing expectations. So we talked about that sort of, the hope and hype and the consequences of that, but also the managing expectations of what are your goals for a research institution, and are they sort of achievable? And when you talk about what the mission of your lab is it helping to set you up for success the next time that you have a publication? If you're talking about the goals of your research and then you're putting out a publication about how one of those goals are met, it kind of all comes together. So one of the academic researchers that I think just had in his career has done a phenomenal job with both science and communications is Jay Bradner, who was at the Dana-Farber, and the lab still exists. And I thought they did a very nice job with their positioning statement. So I'll just take a moment to read it. I put in Dana-Farber in brackets just for context here, since I was extracting it from their website, didn't have that. So the Bradner Laboratory is developing insights, creating molecules, and establishing therapeutic strategies to control gene expression in cancer. Toward these goals, we have assembled as a highly collaborative, interdisciplinary group of scientists that innovate solutions using chemistry, biology, biochemistry, and computer science. Our scientific objectives are to understand pathways of gene regulation, to create technologies that accelerate cancer research, and to translate these ideas as curative cancer therapeutic strategies. Our mission is to train young scientists at the intersection of these fields and to deliver on the promise of targeted therapy in cancer while exemplifying an open source model of basic research and therapeutic discovery. So some of the reasons why I really like this, it's pretty technical still. So like if you're a non-science donor coming to the Farber's website or thinking about supporting that lab, it takes a little bit getting through, but you really get a good sense of both very high level, what are the broader sort of mechanisms in oncology that the lab is interested in investigating. It's not kind of everything. And are there sort of particular strengths in terms of the types of technologies that are coming out of that? So I think, his lab, I would say, is recognized as a chemistry, like biology lab, and one that's really, advancing the development of new candidates using that technique. And then I love that at the end, there's a real pitch there for what is it like to be a scientist within the lab. So it's not just talking about broader, what are they working on, but sort of the culture that that he fostered in building the lab and bringing scientists into it. Positioning is like a press release or any other messaging exercise, taking a whole lot of messages about what you're trying to do and distill it down into something really succinct. To help you think through this, I am very visual in how I'd like to organize information. But there might be sort of key categories of messages just to help you kind of brainstorm and categorize what it is that you want to say. And so, the platform might be, the broader, the types of technologies or tools that you're using to, investigate your research, like the chemistry, the systems biology, those kinds of things. Maybe it's specifically epigenetic research or kind of whatever. The opportunity I see is that broader kind of market, in your field, what kinds of questions are you trying to answer? So that in the Bradner Lab description, that very first sentence I see as tying back to the opportunity. Milestones, again, sort of what are the things that you're trying to achieve? What are the goals that you've set up to, measure success for your research? And the team, is there something particularly unique about the team that is currently within the lab? What it like at the very end of the Bradner Lab description, talking about sort of the culture and what it's like to be a researcher, and what kind of people would you like to come work with you if that's something that's important to communicate. So again, it kind of helps you get a whole bunch of those messages down there. And some categories to help you think about it, and then you can extract, as that was 4 of the sentences that you think really summarize and articulate it the best, and that kind of helps you then distill it into that one paragraph.